Hello, and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today, we're going to interview actor Vernon Wells. Vernon has starred in some great movies, including Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior with Mel Gibson, Weird Science with Kelly LeBrock, Inner Space, The Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis, and many other great movies. One of his most famous roles was that of the psychotic, post apocalyptic biker gang leader named Wes, who relentlessly pursues Mel Gibson in Mad Max 2. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot more great celebrity interviews coming up, so I encourage you to click on the notification bell so you can get notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great gift if you want to purchase a live phone call for yourself or from somebody for somebody you know with a real celebrity. So give it a try. A live 15-second celebrity phone call is $19.95, and a live 30-second call is $19.95. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's say hello to Vernon Wells. Hello, Vernon. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, John. It's nice and sunny down here, so I guess I'm one of the lucky ones, huh?
Yeah. And you have electricity from what I can see.
Yeah. I actually had my dog running around when one of those little whirly giggies to do it, but they put the electricity back on, so we're fine.
So, are you in California or Australia?
No, I'm in California.
Oh, okay. All right. So the first thing I want to tell you is that people are always asking me to get one of the stars from Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, on the show. Now, you would think that people would remember Mel Gibson most from that movie, but interestingly enough, the character they love to talk about is you as the evil biker guy with the mohawk and the open air chaps that were air conditioned in the back. Now, the movie just gets more popular over the years. But before we get into that, I would like to ask you, how did you get your first big break in the industry?
Well, it was all, as they say, in the classics. It was by accident, literally by accident. I was lead vocalist in a couple of bands in Australia. My mother was in the music writing business, and I kind of followed in her footsteps. And I was in the band vehicle. We were coming back from a gig, and we got into an accident, and my back was, I had two compressed fractures in my spine in vertebrae. So I couldn't work with the band for quite a while. I had to be very careful what I did. And while I was recuperating, I became a total pain in the rear end to our manager, who took my photograph around to all the casting agents in Melbourne, where I lived in Melbourne, Victoria. And finally, one of them was looking for a guy that could ride a horse, drive a car, whatever, for a series of cigarette commercials. And I got it. And I did the commercials, and I realized that I was making a reasonably good amount of money, and I didn't have to share it with 5 other guys. So that was where it all started. I didn't really like being in front of a camera. I was more intrigued with behind the camera. The being in front of it didn't really intrigue me that much. And I got asked to do a stage play called Hosanna by Michel Tremblay, a French-Canadian writer, which is a two-hander, just two people in the play for nearly 2 hours. And while I was doing the play, George Miller's girlfriend at that stage, Sandy Gore, who always liked to tell me that she came to watch a stage play and got to see Vernon Wells naked masturbating. And that intrigued her immensely, that I was brave enough to be on stage doing what I was doing and yet commanded everything around me. And she got on to George. George came down, saw me. We had a chat, told jokes to each other. That was basically it. He went back to Sydney. About 3 months later, I was in Sydney doing wardrobe and makeup tests for Road Warrior.
Now, you're originally from Australia. How did you make the transition from Australian movies to Hollywood?
Um, Joel Silver wanted me to do weird science. And I wasn't that interested in coming to America, to be very blunt. That I was happy being in Australia and doing my thing. And he got hold of my managers and persisted in getting me over there to do weird science. So I came to the States, I did weird science. He took me around to a lot of agents and things to see them, talk to them. And then I went home because to me, I was finished. And lo and behold, about 3 months after that, I got asked to come back and do Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's where it sort of started. And from then on, I did most of my films over here.
So let's back up to Weird Science for a moment. Weird Science also starred Kelly LeBrock, who I believe was one of the 10 most beautiful women in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I met her, and she is just a great person. How did you like working with her on that movie? And did you fall in love with her the way every other man within 100 miles of her falls in love with her whenever she's around?
I actually enjoyed working with her, and she's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful lady and adorable. Even now, I still talk to her occasionally. She's just adorable. I didn't fall in love with her, surprisingly enough. I think I was too terrified of what I was doing over here to fall in love with anybody. I mean, it was the first time I'd come to America, and everything was in Australia. Everything's so small, it's not it wasn't at that stage a big industry. Mm-hmm. So you tended to know everybody. I came over here, I knew nobody, and so I was very interior into myself. I really didn't let all of me out. I was just very held back. Because I was very scared of what was going on around me. So I didn't really, but as time went on, when I saw her at a couple of functions that I had to go to and things, I adored her. I still do. I think she's an absolutely beautiful lady. So, but on the day, no, but I enjoyed working with her.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful and very intelligent. Now, you have this great story that you tell about how producer Joel Silver went to considerable and repeated lengths to get you to do the movie Weird Science. Can you tell us that story?
It was it was one of those ridiculous things where they rang up and talked to my manager and said they wanted me to come over and reprise the role I'd done in Road Warrior. And I said to my manager, I'm not really interested in going to the States in the first place, and no, I don't want to play Wes again. So she rang and said, no, he's not interested. And then they rang back a month or so later and they offered more money, which I guess they thought it was a ploy to get more money. And she rang me and said, they just offered you more money. Do you want to go? And I said, no, I really don't. It doesn't interest me. And so she told them, and then there was a long silence. And apparently they rang up and said, that's fine, we'll move on. We'll get somebody else to play the role or a different role. And so that was it. I didn't even worry about it. Then I got a phone call from her one day and she said, you got a choice here, kid. You go to America and do the role, or I'm going to get a couple of my friends to come and cart you onto the plane with broken legs. So basically, I didn't get a big choice but to come over here and do Weird Science.
Now, Joel Silver has some really deep pockets. And without divulging specific numbers, was offer number 3 that he made to you twice as good as offer number 1? Was it 5 times as good as offer number 1?
To be blunt and serious, I have no idea.
Yeah.
My manager was handling all that. I never got offered anything. He would talk, and she would say that he's offering you more money. And then on the final one, she said, sweetheart, you are not going to get this much money doing a movie in Australia. You're going to America. And that was basically it. And that, funnily enough, out of that was the last time I ever saw her. She retired. After I had come to do that film. She got out of the business. I was the one person she always considered had the biggest chance to make it in America as a movie actor. And when she'd done that, she felt that she'd achieved what she wanted to do, and that was it. So I never actually saw her again.
You know what that sounds like? And what it feels like to me is it feels like fate coercing you into accepting your destiny. Because once you arrived in Hollywood, things changed.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was funny because the little boy from the bush, I grew up on a farm, so I was the little boy from the bush, and I was out of my depth. I mean, totally out of my depth, and amazed. My eyes were bigger than my head. Continuously, I would look at the sets, at the people, at everything, and I was just, like, whoa, starstruck. I still am. I still love working with stars. I adore it because to me, it's part of what we do. And just being in that situation, I mean, we had some people come out of that film that have gone on to become superstars. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., for instance. People that were in that little film just went on to become major, major, major stars. So when I look back on it, it was one of those little things in life, like doing Road Warrior, for instance, when I really didn't want to, and doing that film led to bigger and better things, and it just kept going from there. So like you said, fate had a destiny for me, and I had no choice but to follow it.
So you are really good at playing terrible villains on the screen. And that's no small feat because a lot of people make fools of themselves trying to do just that, and it doesn't work. But every time I've met you at public events, and I've met you a couple times over the years, every time I've met you in the past, you were always really polite, really friendly, and really professional. Do you think that people are surprised by that, given all the evil villains you have played on screen?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that people really expect me to be what I've played at times. To me, it's acting. It's what I do, and so as everybody that works with me knows, the minute they say cut, I'm Vernon. The minute they say action, I'm the character. As Arnold Schwarzenegger said, he was afraid I would never be right for him, that I was so laid back, so nice. He said he is such a nice man until they say action. Then he turns into a raving lunatic and as scary as hell. And that's basically it. I don't carry the character with me when I'm not in front of the camera doing my job. And I think that's what kind of fools people into believing that no, it's really, I wouldn't like to get on his bad side.
It's funny you should say that because we just interviewed Pepe Serna from Scarface.
Uh-huh.
He's the guy who got chopped up in the shower scene.
Mm-hmm.
And Pepe said that Al Pacino always stayed in character 24/7 during the filming of that movie. Off camera, on camera, it didn't matter. So he said it was very intense. So I've got a question for you. I like to throw curveballs from time to time, and I'm going to throw one at you. Who do you think gets hit on more often by women? Is it actors who play villains in the movies or actors who play nice guys in the movies?
Being serious, I think it's actors that play villains.
I do too. I really do. And I think the paychecks are more serious over time.
Yeah, it's. I think it's mostly because most women like that bad boy thing, and they always feel they can change you.
Yeah, and appearing in Scarface completely changed Pepe's life. I mean, dramatically. So I really believe there's something to that. So next, let's talk about a movie you did with Bruce Willis, Christopher Walken, and Bruce Dern called Last Man Standing. This movie just keeps getting better and better with the passing years. How did you like working on that film? And do you have any stories you can tell us about the film?
Gosh, I enjoyed working on it. I had a lot of fun. And once again, it was back when I was a newbie on the block, so everybody was nice to me. Bruce redid a scene with me because he thought that it appeared that I beat him. And so I got taken back and had the crap kicked out of me for 6 hours. But apart from that, no, everything was really good. I mean, to me, it's all what it's about. And I mean, I look at it, I remember that Arnold Schwarzenegger I went to a party at his house, and Clint Eastwood was there. Clint Eastwood's one of my favorite actors, and of course Arnold knew it, and he took me over to meet him, and he said, "Hey, Clint, here's Vernon Wells," and he just looked up at me and he said, "Vernon, very pleased to meet you. Love what you do." I just stood there with my mouth open, said nothing. I was so starstruck at this man standing in front of me, and he's a big boy, so I was looking up at him. And I think if I ever lost that feeling, I seriously wouldn't like what I'm doing, because I love the fact that I can still meet people who I consider to be my peers and get excited to be around them. And that's the part of the business that I love the most.
Yeah, I believe quality fuels quality. And when you're around quality and talent, that it inspires you and takes you to the next level as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christopher Walken has this great sense of timing when he speaks that is very unique. It's almost like he speaks in 3-word phrases to force the audience to listen more carefully to him. And it really works. It's really effective, especially when he does it comedically on Saturday Night Live or elsewhere. Is he like that on camera too? Is that how he speaks off camera too?
Basically, but not exactly. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little more pronounced when he's doing a character, because, and also I think a lot of it with Chris is that he gets so inside the character that he's bringing out that inner part of what he is, and speaking the way he speaks is he's very thoughtful. As a human being, he's very thoughtful. So I think it's this thought track that he's using, that he's bringing it out, and so it comes out in that way, and it makes you, like you said, it makes you stand there and listen to and for an actor that's playing opposite him, it's wonderful, because you have to listen to him. You can't just ignore the fact and say, well, I know what's coming next because I know the dialogue. You just have to stand there and listen to him. There's a couple of people I've worked with that have that similar effect on you, that you get brought into what they're doing, and you just stand there, even though you know what will happen at the end of the dialogue. Excuse me, you're waiting for it. You're like, oh, this is so cool. I'm like so invested in what's going on. And I love that way of working with people. But he has it unique, him and Captain Kirk.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Clint Eastwood earlier, and Pepe mentioned him yesterday as well. What's interesting about that is that you very rarely hear Eastwood shouting or screaming in a movie. It's always very subdued and subtle. You almost have to lean in to hear him speak. And he, we sort of think that he does that to force people to listen as well. And it's very, very understated, and it's very, very effective. So it's an interesting technique.
Yeah. People have that.
Yeah, it's very effective. Less really is more when it comes to Clint and in a lot of other cases.
It's a lot of things when you're playing a villain too. You tend to watch a lot of people play villains. They get very overpowering, aggressive with their speech. Mm-hmm. When what is more scary and more effective at times is that similar attitude, that if you're just talking and you're just talking quietly to somebody, that is terrifying, because you know what the person who's saying those words is capable of. So that becomes a terrifying thing. Whereas if you're doing it in more of a demonstrative way, and you're sort of threatening, you lose a lot of that terror. It then just becomes, oh yeah, he's going to kick his butt. So yeah, I like it too.
So the interesting thing about Christopher Walken is how good he is at keeping his personal life private. We did a lot of research, and other than being a great actor, who I've heard loves to cook and who enjoys dancing, there really isn't much out there about Christopher Walken. He's very, very discreet. What was your impression of him? Did you get that sense as well?
Yeah, no, he's very straight. Like his life is his life. His acting is his acting. And I applaud that, because I think the worst thing that happens to us as actors is once you get to a certain stage, is everybody wants a piece of you.
That's very funny, because we saw some interview footage of him. Some reporters were trying to corner him and pressure him into commenting on some political topic. and he just started laughing, and he brought them over to the table, and he was showing them the lasagna he was cooking, so he just completely deflected it with the lasagna.
Yep.
So now let's get to what everybody has been waiting for, and that is the action-packed masterpiece you did with Mel Gibson called Mad Max 2: Road Warrior. How did you get that role?
Well, as I said originally, Sandy Gore saw me in a stage play called Hosanna, and within about 3 minutes of me being on stage, I have stripped naked and I'm doing things. It was a terrifying piece to do because the first row of the theater is like 3.5 feet away from you, and it's very difficult, believe me. But I guess, somewhere in my grandfather, I grew up with my grandfather, and he always used to say to me that, your destiny is planned when you're born, and no matter what you do, you will always be driven towards that destiny. And I guess in its own way, that's what happened to me. I never wanted to do the stage play. I hid from that stage play for nearly 4.5 months. I actually went on a ship as a cruise director to get away from them. And when I came back, they were basically on the dock waiting for me. So I couldn't get away from it. So I did it. And thankfully I did, or you and I would not be speaking. And Sandy came to, in Australia, they have what's called a midnight showing, that all the people in other plays that are going on in Melbourne can come to this one night and see this particular play, the same as we could go and see theirs on one particular Friday night. They'd have a midnight showing. And she came, saw me, was enthralled. I rang George, told George to come look. George came down. We had coffee, we laughed, we told jokes. He left, I left. I had no idea why he was there. And then about 2 months later, my manager said, you have to fly up to Sydney and do wardrobe and costume fittings. And I said, for what? And she said, for Road Warrior. And I was like, what's a Road Warrior? I'd never even heard of the film. And she said, the sequel to Mad Max. I hadn't heard of Mad Max. I'd never seen Mad Max. And she said, do yourself a favor, go to a drive-in somewhere where it's playing, because it was playing at the drive-in, and watch it. So I went to the drive-in, and actually I was watching Mad Max and Duel as a double header.
Oh, yeah.
And she said to me, so what'd you think? And I went, Duel was great. I really liked Duel. And she went, no, Mad Max. I went, oh, yeah, Mad Max. Oh, yeah, that was okay. And that was my whole attitude. And when I went up to Sydney, I just said to George, I don't know that I can do this. I mean, it was my first film, and I'd done virtually nothing before that, just extras and little bits and, the right-hand man to the hero type thing. And I said, I don't think I can do this. And he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And, turn around, show me what the costume looks like. Yeah, that looks great. And I think I must have said 6 times that I was worried about doing it. And 6 times he just said, yeah, uh-huh. And so we went on, and I finished up being up in Broken Hill playing Wes. And I remember that for a week before we started filming, we had to write a biography of the character from when he was born to when the film started, so that we knew everything. And every day, we'd do it at night, every day it would be dissected by George and Terry Hayes and the other writer on the project. And so by the time we got to the camera, we knew the character inside out, where it was going, why it was doing it, and the whole 9 yards. And whenever you got stuck, if you said to George, George, what do you want me to do? He would just say, well, what would Wes do? And so you would go, well, I think he would do this or that. And he would say, good, let's do it. And that was why I think the film works so well, is because every character the actors knew who they were so well. They had a background to rely on, that everything to go with. And we were shooting in like the middle of nowhere, and it was freezing cold, and having a ball.
Nice. Where was it filmed?
It was filmed in Broken Hill, which is up on the border of New South Wales and South Australia. It's a mining town.
Interesting. So as a director, I really believe George Miller is a certifiable genius, especially when it comes to action. Did you have the ability to watch him work? And if so, what do you think makes him so good? Because his action sequences, everything he does, even the quick cutaways, it's brilliant. He makes sure that every moment of the film captures you in some way. Uh, were you able to observe that over time,
Oh
or
yeah, yeah. I spent a lot of time with George, and I spent a lot of time with the producer. We all became very close, and I watched what George did because, like I said originally, I was fascinated by what happened behind the camera, and so I watched what George did a lot. And I was very fortunate that he allowed me in Sydney to come into the editing suite because I had to go up and do some looping, and he allowed me to come in and watch the editing and watch how he did it. And I was talking to him one day, and I said, George, tell me your secret, because we were just talking about everything. And he said, I don't have a secret. He said, it's logic. He said, all a good scene is a roller coaster ride. You go up, 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 slowly, 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 till you get to the top. And as you get to the top, you pause for a second, and then you scream down the other side. And at the bottom of that roller coaster is a brick wall, and you're headed straight for that brick wall. Now, the roller coaster turns, but you don't, because your mind continues on into the brick wall. So you are so determined that you hit that brick wall that nothing anyone can tell you will change your mind. And I've had that at conventions I've been at, where people have come up to me and said, oh, blah, blah, about such and such. And I've gone, no, that didn't happen. Actually, it happened like this. And they go, no, 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 no. When that thing and the guy's head hit the back of the train, they all exploded, and you were, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Because people are so sure it happened, because, as George used to say, your mind gives you more dramatic pictures than I can on the screen. And so my thing is to bring you to that point, is to where there is no return for you. You have just got to keep going forward. And the reality is you turn away, but you don't. You think you've gone straight into that brick wall. And I always used to say that is the most brilliant concept, and that's how he edits and does his films. He grafts them that way.
That's the exact word I was going to use. It is brilliant, and I'll tell you why. De Palma, who I believe directed Scarface, the shower scene where Pepe gets his arm cut off, is routinely described as one of the most intense, violent scenes in cinema. Yet Pepe's arm never really gets shown being cut off. The camera turns away. Yet everybody thinks they saw his arm get cut off. So it's the same phenomenon. Very, very interesting.
Yep, it's that thing that you can lead people to a point of where their mind takes over, and that's what these people that do the brilliant directing jobs in these films, George and De Palma and these people, they have that down, that technique down, and they can just take you, put you there, make you believe it when it hasn't happened. And I think that's the brilliance of a brilliant director.
Beautiful explanation. Beautiful. How difficult was it to film some of those action sequences? Because when you see them on the screen, it always looks like a miracle that somebody wasn't killed filming that scene. Even, for example, in Fury Road, every one of those looks like a fatality waiting to happen on the set for the stunt people or the actors. Do these things take an hour to set up, a week to set up? What is the process to set these things up?
George is extremely careful. I mean, extraordinarily careful. He wants no accidents on the set. I mean, probably 70% of what, maybe even 80, up to 80% of what happened in Road Warrior, I did. And I mean, I was not a certified lunatic or stuntman. I was just so secure in what I was doing with the people I was working with. And they had me doing things. There's 3 or 4 stunts that George would not let me near, because he was like, no, I need to finish the film with you. Because he was sure that I would break my own neck if I had the chance to do something ridiculous. But he is so conscious. And right before we started, he had a lecture with everybody, and he said if anybody was caught on the set with alcohol or drugs, they were fired instantly, regardless of whether they were the star of the film or somebody working behind the scenes. He was so adamant about it. And the stunt crew, Max Aspen, Mad Max as we called him, he was so careful with everybody, and the stunt guys were brilliant. And so there was minor acts, don't get me wrong. I had my elbow chipped by the boomerang. It got caught in a little wind draft when the kid threw it, when Emil threw it. It hit me right on the point of the elbow. It was just a sheer accident. You couldn't have done anything to stop that. There was, one of the stunt guys was riding a motorbike chasing some dromedaries to get them off the set, and one of them got peeved and kicked him and broke his leg. But it was little things like that. There was nothing in the scenes that were really, really large. Not one person got hurt. There was nothing.
You just mentioned boomerangs. I've never tossed one. I've never caught one. But as I watch it in the movie, and I've seen them elsewhere, it always looks like a great way to lose an eye or a finger. Is it difficult to toss and catch in real life or not? Not really.
In real life, they're a little more difficult to catch as long as you know the way to throw it. They're simple to throw. But then again, we grow up with them. So, in Australia, people throw boomerangs around all the time just for fun. It's like, and if you look behind me, there's one on the wall behind my head. We sort of know what they are and know how to throw them. But catching them's another thing. If you've got to catch them like a pie, you catch them between your two hands. You don't grab them like that. If you grab them like that, you're going to be a sorry person. So you actually grab it like that. And it's always after they've come around, when they're coming towards you, they've lost most of their projection and most of the way they're going. So there's not as much speed, there's not as much power. So you can just do that, catch them and walk away with them. But catching it like that without gloves on, not a good thought.
Is a boomerang, and I ask this obviously because I've never tossed one. Is a boomerang a weapon or is it a sports tool?
It's a weapon. It's an Aboriginal weapon. They killed kangaroos and people with them.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's a weapon. It's used for killing things. It's not used for sport.
Interesting. So now you had to wear what looked like a very uncomfortable pair of leather chaps in the movie that had you exposed. How uncomfortable was that?
Let me put it to you this way. I now know why women hate G-strings.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Oh, to me, it was annoying most of the time. And they had this saying on the set, they called me barometer bum. And they figured that every time the cheeks of my rear went kind of reddy purple, it was time to get us into the heat because we're all getting a little cold. But apart from that, it was fine. I mean, you got used to it. It's one of those things where when you put it on, you're like, not so sure about this. And we had a lot of talks about me having the back flap. The wardrobe lady, she was not real keen on me having that. She wanted to open. I was totally against having it all open. And eventually I was able to convince her because I jump on and off motorcycles and I got a couple of rug burns on my rear end. And so she sort of went, okay, you win, you can have the flap on the back. But that was really the only, that and the thing around my neck. The actual shoulder pads that we had were an American gridiron shoulder pads, and they would move around and they would actually cut into my neck and make me bleed because I would be moving so much. So they put they put sheepskin inside to sort of cover it so that it didn't get into me. And then they thought that looked just a little not good. So they put the feathers on to disguise that. And that's where those feathers were what made the costume and the character. I mean, that whole image of the red mohawk and that shoulder pad was what made that character. And it's amazing that it all came in small increments. It wasn't, I didn't walk on and they put it all on me and went, yeah, there you go. It was little things that were adjusted, little things were changed to make it work. And we ended up with that costume, which I think was, I love the costume. I actually have it in my house.
Nice. So were the other actors making constant fun of those air-conditioned chaps throughout the whole movie, or were they too afraid of you to do that?
No, everybody was very nice to me. They all knew what I felt like. I was out there being air conditioned and it was freezing. You have no idea. It looks like we're in the most sunny, wonderful place on the planet, when the reality was we're in a valley between two mountain ranges and they had snow on them. So you can imagine what the wind was like when it came down off the mountains and came up that valley. It was freezing. And I had no headgear and no butt gear. So I really was cold, and nothing virtually around my midriff that I was cold all the time. I mean, all the time. So everybody was really nice to me because I suffered more than most.
It's funny. So now, as you know, as we mentioned earlier, you did another Joel Silver movie called Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And at first you mentioned that Arnold didn't like you very much, but then I heard that you quickly gained his respect. How did you manage to do that?
It wasn't that he didn't like me, because I act a little differently. Being an Australian, I'm on set. Back then especially, I was very quiet. I would watch what everything was, watch where the cameras were, watch where the lighting was, because, you know, you got to remember that was my third film. And so I was still learning as far as I was concerned. So I was more interested in where everybody was placed, what was happening. And we were doing rehearsals, and I'd flown in the night before. The first scene we did with me and Arnold was where I have the knife to his throat saying, if I had my way, I would have cut your throat. And that was the first scene I did with Arnie. So I'd flown in the night before, 12 hours from Australia. And, you know, I was a little tired. And so I was trying to get my act together, what I was doing. And Arnie apparently had said to Joel Silver, I don't think it's going to work. He's just too soft. And Joel, God bless him, said, well, can we shoot this scene? If you still think that, we'll stop and we'll recast. And he said, okay. So, you know, he's laying there. And of course, the minute the director said action, I just went for it. I had this rubber or plastic knife up inside Arnie's throat, and I gave it to him. And when the scene was shot, Joel walked over. He said, well, what do you want to do? Recast it or what? And he said, I like him, but never give him a real knife. So that's, Arnie and I became firm friends. You know, I mean, he tortured me for the next 5 weeks, but it was fun. It was totally enjoyable. I love him. I run into him all the time. He's a great, great man. And he actually has a great sense of humor, which I think is what endears him to everybody. He is actually quite funny. And I think in a lot of it, he has this sarcastic, Australians are very sarcastic, and Arnie has that kind of sarcastic feel about him, so that at times you're never quite sure of whether he's taking you on or whether he's serious, you know. So you're kind of thinking, heck, how do I answer this? But it was fun. I enjoyed working with him, and we had a good time together.
Now, you mentioned earlier that every time you said no to Joel Silver, that he increased his salary offer. And now, did you ever use that technique subsequently in your career with other producers as a negotiating tactic, or was that a one-time?
No, I didn't even know I was using it as a tactic back then. All I was doing, my manager would ring me and say they've rung back and they've offered you more the money and they want you to go. And I go, I don't want to go. You know, it wasn't money. It had nothing to do with money. I was like, I don't want to go. You know, I don't want to go to America. America scared me senseless. I didn't want to come over here at all. And so it wasn't a tactic, but I mean, it paid off in the end, of course. But I just didn't want to come over. And once I did come over, of course, Joel asked me to do Commando. And then in the reality, that didn't work out because the director said he didn't want me to do the film. He had someone else. And that didn't work out. And so Joel came back to me and asked me to fly back from Australia and do Commando. So I always say to people, they say, I've had a great career. I say, no, I've had a lucky career. I really have. I've been at the right place at the right time and incredibly lucky.
Saying no to a producer is like catnip to them. It drives them crazy. They just keep coming and coming and coming. So one way or another, it's worked for you.
Yeah, it wasn't on purpose. Let's put it that way.
So of all the movies you've done, which are you most fond of? Are there one or two or three movies that you just look back on and smile and say, thank God for that?
Yeah, the funny thing is, I mean, apart from all the large films I've done, which have been a lot of fun, I really enjoy the smaller films because to me, it's more of a family attitude. You've got smaller crews, you've got actors who are there because they want to do the job. Nothing's about money, everything's about let's get this done. So I really like the camaraderie of those. I did a film called Circle Man, which is a boxing movie that I did. It was way, 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 way back. I shot it up in Canada, and it got amazing reviews overseas. Everybody loved it. And it never played in America because the producers made quite a lot of money overseas, and they said they weren't going to spend all the money to put it out on the American market. They made their profit. They were happy. And now you can find it if you look for it. Another one I did, which I adored, was King of the Ants. I thought that was just such a special, special movie. And then lately I've done some films which I love, one being Trouble Is My Business, a film noir, black and white, which with Tom Conkle, which I thought was just wonderful. And I've just finished a couple, Kill Giggles, which is a horror film, which in its own way, which is just beautiful. And so I think I've been incredibly fortunate that as I've got older, I've actually become a pretty good actor, and I keep getting cast into these wonderful, wonderful films that I really enjoy doing, where I can actually stretch. Nobody allows me to go on the set and just be Vernon. I go on the stretch and people push me to my limits to get what they want out of me to make sure that and I love that. I think that is what is so wonderful. And I've gone back to directing. I've been directing, I've directed a couple of films and 3 episodes of a series. So I'm having what is called, I think in this business, an amazing time.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, we did a lot of research. And we came across a short movie you did called Fear the Woods, which was really well done. I told a number of people to watch it, and they all came back and they said the same thing. They said it was really good and that you and the producers of the movie should figure out a way to make a full-length feature out of it because it has hit written all over it. What's the story behind that project? And is there any chance, everybody's asking me to ask you this question, so I have to ask it.
Okay.
Is there any chance that they will make it into a full-length movie?
Okay, I'll tell you the truth on this one. The director, who's a friend, I've done a couple of films for him, Titus Parr, he lives over in Sweden. And he got me to do a film over here. It was a small role in it, but a very important role. And then he rang me one day and he said, I'm doing this basic proof of concept. I want to do this film that I've had in my head for like 10 years. And it's a creature feature. And I went, okay, so what do you need? And he said, I want you to come over to Sweden. I can't afford a lot of money. Well, basically, we've got no money. We'd like you to come to Sweden and do a week shooting this test. And I said, okay, I'm happy to do that. So I went over to Sweden. Sorry about that. I went over to Sweden and we went out it was near Christmas in Sweden. So it was freezing cold and the snow was up to my other parts. And we shot this amazing 25-minute piece that turned out to be 1,000,000 times better than they ever thought. It has now become the first 25 minutes of the film. They are seeking financing at the moment to shoot the whole film. The pandemic kind of put a glitch into all their things, but they want to get it shot in Sweden, and as a full length, they got everything ready to go. It's not an expensive film because they've got all of the special effects and everything they did on the first one, so everything's there. It's virtually now just getting the money to make the full length movie.
Do you think they'll find the money, or are they still looking?
They're still looking for it.
What do you think it would take to finish
about $1.5 million?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. It is so well done. The direction, the acting, the editing, the writing. It's beautifully. It's economical. When the bear does attack, it gives everybody a heart attack. That is beautifully cut. So well done. The director appears to be very talented.
He is. Titus is wonderful, and he gave me the greatest comment when it was over and they'd finished editing. He sent me an email, and he said, "Vernon, I have watched this for the last 2.5 months editing it, and I'm sorry, I have to tell you, this is probably the best thing you have ever done. It is brilliant." And I was like, wow. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, that is such a cool. And he managed to do something which you don't see, and that was he managed to get the emotions without a lot of dialogue. He managed to make it so scary without making it scary. That was what I loved about it.
And without a $20 million budget, without any insanity, just beautiful dialogue, beautiful acting, beautiful editing. And, a couple of people said the same thing. They were all hoping that you and the other fellow would push the son to the front of the line, and maybe he would hopefully get killed first.
They were actually, those two are just the most wonderful actors. I mean, they are just phenomenal and the most wonderful people to be around when you're working. I just adore them both. And they were just superb in the film. And it was kind of funny. And the thing that is funny, the last scene of that film, by the firelight, where my son's sitting there talking, and then I'm sitting in front of him. I mean, I'm dead, but it's my ghost virtually talking to him. Wasn't in the film. We did it because we were all just finished dinner in the cabin where we're all staying, the crew and cast and everything, this very big cabin out on the mountain. And Titus said, "How about we switch all the lights off and just do this little thing in front of the fire? I've got this thing in my mind. Do you mind?" And was like, "No." And we shot it in front of the fire with nothing but firelight, just shot it in front of the fire. And when we finished, Titus said, "It probably won't go in the short, but it was fun to shoot." And he said it looked so great. Like his editor put it in. His editor, when he came, he said, "Oh my God, this goes in the film." And he put it at the end of the film because it was just such a nice piece that sort of was what the film was about. And the film's actually about him and my daughter, who are the ones who eventually set off to get the beast that's killing people.
The other people who saw it hated the kid so much that I was hoping at one point that, if the kid did get attacked by the bear and the bear took a big bite out of the kid, that the bear would be so disgusted by the taste of this kid that he would spit him out and go after the other people. I thought that would have been very funny.
It kind of got at him at the end there when he was jumping into and that was freezing water. I mean, that ice was real. It was, he jumped into that river about 4 times. A better man than me. I would not have done it. I'm sorry, but he did it. And that's one of my favorite. If you want to know my favorites, that's one of my most favorite things that I've done for a long time. I loved it to death and still do. And it's won, God, so many awards. It's not funny. I've been lucky. I've won a couple of Best Acting awards for it. So, and Rolf won a Best Supporting Actor for it. So, it's turned out to be, I think, 1 million times more than what we hoped it would be. But I think Titus, in his mind, knew it could be, and he achieved it. And, I applaud him for that.
So a lot of celebrities I know are moving out of California. How do you like living there now? And have you ever thought about moving out for tax reasons or perhaps other reasons?
Nope.
No? Okay.
No, I mean, if I decided to move, I would go back to Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd just move out of California. But there's a couple of places I love in the world. I love New Zealand and I love South Africa. So, and I've been fortunate to have filmed in both of them. But no, I live here in California in Pacific Palisades, and my house looks straight out. I'm sitting here looking at the ocean. So, excuse me, I'm happy. And, I mean, whatever the situation is with whether it's politics or the pandemic or whatever, I look at it logically. We will overcome, as a human race, regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat or you're black or you're white or you're green or whatever. We will overcome. And as human beings, we will find a way to succeed and to continue on. So
that's a very, very healthy perspective, and it's a great way to maintain your sanity. So you're also a director. You love to act, but you're also a director. Yep. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you enjoy about it so much?
To me, well, I'm also a producer and I write as well. So I think mostly because that's the way I was brought up. I did everything. And when I first started into wanting to be a director, I was hired by one of the premier directors in Australia who shot commercials and things. And he hired me as his assistant. And he made me work my way up. In other words, I started sweeping floors and then I went into film, because back then everything was shot on 35. So I was in the film library doing what I needed to do there, categorizing things. And then when he felt I'd learned that, I moved on to grip, and I learned all about the grip department. Then I moved into the lighting department, learned all about that. Then I moved into the effects department. And then I started producing these very large commercials and things. And he just one day, when he felt I was ready, we were shooting a big commercial, which I'd put together, a special effects laden thing. And he just walked past my door on his way out. It was being shot the next day, and said, "This one's yours, enjoy it." And that was where it started. And that was where I loved it. And I loved it because as an actor, you learn why people do things. And the best, the directors that I love the most to work with are actors, because they understand what an actor does. As a director, they understand what an actor does, and they know how to get you to do what they need. And that was my whole point. I wanted to know how to direct better. So I went through it. And my first big directing job over here was by accident. Again, was my partner in crime, Brian Martin. Him and I own a studio up in Sacramento. And he does a lot of filming. And we were shooting a horror film based on a ship. And we'd had a problem. And he had to give up directing to be camera. He's also a cameraman. So he'd gone behind the camera. And I was just sort of standing beside him. And I said, "Do you want me to assist you?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, do you want me to sort of first AD it for you, seeing as you're now camera?" And he said, "No." And I went, "Oh, okay." And he said, "You're directing it." And I went, "What?" He said, "You're directing it. Get your butt out there and start directing." And I was like, and it was like, again, I was like on the spot. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't bitch and moan. So I got out and I directed the last quarter of the film. And from there, he just said, he wanted to make sure that I directed quite a lot, because he prefers to produce, be on behind the scenes. So I've been fortunate in that respect that I've been asked to direct quite a lot, in which I've done a few. And they were doing a series, and I got to direct 3 episodes of that. I just enjoy it. To me, it's no different to acting. I think that directing is acting in its own degree, that I need to know where the scene's going, and I need to know who is doing what and why, otherwise I can't direct it properly. And as an actor, you need to know the exact same things or you can't act it properly. So I love to have actors who want to give. I'm not one of these directors that says, okay, I'm the director, you stand there, this is how I want it, now let's do it. I'm the director who says, okay, guys, we got this scene, what are we going to do to make it really leap off the page? And everybody, actors are great. They all know their characters and they all want to make their character better. So from that, you can build up on what's happening, and you can make a good film or a good television show or whatever. And that's what I love about it.
So I'm going to ask a question to the producer side of your brain now. The pandemic has slowed the movie business down a little bit over the last year. When do you think it will return to full speed again?
I think if we all are smart enough to do what we know is right, it will probably get back to a semblance of reality more into like August, September of this year. I mean, people are filming at the moment. I've done a couple of films, but they've always been done exactly to what SAG and the guidelines are for COVID-19, which is the only way I'll work anyway. And slowly but surely, we're slowly there's more production happening slowly but surely. I think, so August, September, around there, we should be back in a semblance, but we won't be back to full steam for probably another year or more. But also, regardless of what's happening, a lot of good things have come from this. We've realized that we don't have to have 150 people on the set to make a film. So we're starting to realize that we can do things with less and do them as good, if not better. So I think there has been some really nice things come out of it, as well as the horrific side of it, where so many people have lost their lives, which I think is just, I don't like to think about it. I've lost some friends, and it's not good. It's probably one of my biggest fears, that if ever I got it and I was bad, that I would end up on my own. And I think that is a terrible fear we all have, is to die on your own. Yeah. And I always feel so sorry for everybody that passes, that you don't have that fulfillment. When we have to go, we have to go. I know that, but at least it's nice to have your friends and family there, so that you've got a way to go. But when you're on your own and in that condition, I don't like it. I don't want to do it. And I have so much empathy for everybody that goes through anything like that. It just tortures me. But it also gives me incredible emotional content for when I'm acting and directing. So, out of all bad, some good will come. So,
Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything you would like to promote?
Anything I'd like to promote? Let me see. Yes, Kill Giggles is coming out soon, which I think is wonderful. And also Accidental Christmas, which I did a few months ago, is coming out later. And the funding for Fear of the Woods. I like to promote Fear of the Woods because I think it is well worthwhile as a movie.
I have a good feeling about it, and I think it's getting a lot of attention, and I think it will probably get funded. It is certainly worthy of it. Well, listen, Vernon, you are a great storyteller. It's been a real pleasure having you on the John Ark Show. I want to wish you continued success and tell you that you are always welcome back on the show, sir.
Well, my pleasure. I would love to come back, John. It's just been fun. And I must tell you that at the bottom of my screen, it says Grace Kono Wells, which is really not my name. But that's all right. I'm using my wife's computer. But I have had a ball. It's been a pleasure to be on your show. And, you're the second person in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks that I've done an interview with, which has been, most interviews are about Road Warrior, Commando and the same thing. But you and this young lady from Ireland who did this wonderful interview with me a week ago have actually decided you want to know who I am, which has been an absolute pleasure. And it's different. It makes me think, keeps me on my toes. Otherwise, I tend to put it on auto drive and just answer the questions because I've answered them 100 times. So I do appreciate that. And I appreciate being on your show, sir. And I would love to come back anytime you would have me. And if we do get Fear of the Woods up and running, I would love to come back and tell you about it and bring some footage of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, I really appreciate the kind words. And we look forward to seeing you again, sir.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank our viewers for watching and tell you that we're going to have more great celebrity interviews and more breaking news stories coming up in the future. So we want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel and click on the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post a new episode. Thank you, and we will see you soon.